My dad practically gave me up to his sister from the moment I was born. My mom died when she was giving birth to me. And my aunt told me he never recovered from that because he blamed me for her dying. It hurt a lot as a kid that at family events he would ignore my existence. When I was a little older, he got more vocal about me killing her, and he can't stand to look at my face. You can imagine the amount of therapy that put me in. I used to go to church crying because I was scared about going to hell for doing that to my mom. That's how much his words me up. But the shitty part was that I never stopped trying to be accepted by him. After my high school graduation, he told me to never bother him again since he legally has no obligation to me anymore, since he was sending my aunt money to take care of me. Around that time is when I finally started accepting that reality, so from there we moved on with our lives. My aunt doesn't talk to me about him. Sometimes my grandparents do, and that's how I found out he got married. They were mad he didn't invite me to their wedding, but to me it didn't matter because we're not close. But it was his wife who wanted to meet me. It's the first time ever that he wants to make contact, and it was to pretty much say she wants me on their life. She doesn't know the real reason about why we're estranged. He asked me to please not say anything, and maybe this could be a way to reconcile after all. But he was only doing it for her. That much was clear when we talked. I never said I would be. He still insisted on us meeting at their place because she really wanted to meet me. All she thinks is we were estranged for not getting along in my teenager years, going to college and losing touch because of life stuff. It pissed me off that he played it off as us just not talking for petty reasons. Meanwhile, the actually reason damaged me for years. I told her the truth. Everything he said to me. That he was never a parent to me, that was all my aunt. It was definitely a shock for her. The outcome was a disaster. Everyone has heard about this now. My grandmas in particular told me she understands my anger. But this was his chance finding someone since losing my mom, and now it's been put in jeopardy. My dad is devastated. They think it was going too far to ruin his marriage that way when he was willing to include me in their lives, which could have been the start of our relationship. And they say not only did I ruin that, but also possibly wrecked his marriage. She just doesn't agree at all with what he did, and it could have been avoided if I didn't say anything. For me, it was hard not to tell the truth after the lies made it seem like it was nothing serious. I couldn't ignore what happened after what it did. If it was the right call, since it put their whole marriage at risk after all. I have a cousin, Kat, who got married to Henry early this year. We weren't close as kids. She was pretty spoiled and would always brag about how much designer stuff she has. Be really mean to people under the guise of just trying to help, etc. Don't go out of our way to interact with one another, but I do see her at family events and whatnot, and we make small talk. I'm engaged to Chris, who is a software engineer. He's co-head of his department at work with 2 other people. Not too long ago, Chris was telling me about how they had some new employees, and one of them sounded really familiar. He told me the name, and I realized it was Kat's husband. Also, he and Henry hadn't met face-to-face yet. Kat and Henry had a huge wedding. It was really nice, but all she did for months is brag about how amazing her wedding was. The wedding stuff's died down now, so recently she started going on about how wealthy her husband is and what a great lifestyle they have. One of my other aunts celebrated her 50th about a week ago. I went with Chris and Kat was there with Henry. We were chatting and Kat was saying how Henry has a fantastic new job that pays even more than his previous one. Henry chimed in and said that they were already planning to buy a new house. Kat asked what Chris does. I said he was an engineer like Henry, and he has a good job too, but I'll admit I left out where he works on purpose. She smiled and nodded, then said it's fine. She understands that I'm embarrassed and want to keep it quiet. So that was pretty much the end of our conversation then. When we were leaving, she pulled me aside and told me to let her and Henry know if we needed help with the wedding. Obviously I knew what she meant and it was just another dig, but I said, "Bye," and left. Literally 2 days later, I get a DM from Kat and she's furious, well, as much as one can be through text. That I didn't tell them that Chris was one of Henry's bosses. Henry was shocked to see him in the office and Chris made a comment, "Tell Kat OP and me don't need help, but thanks for offering." Henry's really embarrassed and so's Kat, and she said that we made them look bad on purpose, and if she knew she'd have never made those comments. It was my duty to tell her and Henry. Chris and I had a really good laugh over this, but she sent a text out to the family group chat we have saying how she was blindsided by me. A few others said that what we did was petty and wrong. My boyfriend Steve and I have been dating for over a year and a half. I met him in one of my upper-level classes 2 years ago. At the time he was finishing up his degree, before moving on and working on his master's. Since we started talking, seeing each other, and dating casually, I really loved our entire relationship. Steve and I had a lot of similar interests, which included traveling. We did a small trip to South America a couple months ago for a few weeks, Peru and Chile. We had an amazing time. It was once we got back from our trip that I saw our relationship in a whole different way. We traveled well together, and bonded in a new way. I knew I was in a great relationship. I thought we had a great relationship, until I got some news a few days ago. 3 days ago, I went over to drop a MacBook charger over at my best friend's house, Chenille. Chenille and I have been best friends since we were in high school from the age of 16 years old. I have always considered her to be my number one and closest person in my life. I have noticed that the past 6 months we haven't hung out in the same capacity that we usually have. Both of us have been busy with our lives, school, work, relationships, etc. But I kinda got the feeling after this past year of university around April that she was starting to move away. She had a bad with her ex that lasted under a year. He cheated on her with a coworker, and the rest is history. They broke officially around the end of January. As I went over to drop off her extra charger that she borrowed, I talked with her mom for a bit. Chenille ended up getting called in to pick up an extra serving shift at the restaurant she has worked at during her degree. Her mom wanted to talk to me about a few things. I was puzzled. Chenille's mom was always really outgoing and funny. We had known each other for over 8 years at least. But she wanted to have a serious talk. Chenille's mom, Karen, went on to tell me that she saw Steve and Chenille sneak around the back of the house about a month or so ago. Karen went on to explain that she noticed this happening 2 other times. At first, she thought we were all hanging out. But Karen told me that she got a weird gut feeling on this situation. She told me that I should talk to Steve and Chenille ASAP. Steve and I were supposed to go out for dinner last night. He picked me up, and off we went. I felt really bad and humiliated the entire time we were out. We ate dinner, had a couple drinks, but we didn't talk much. Steve kept asking me all night what was the matter. I told him nothing. Finally, when we got back to my place, we sat in my room and I asked him. And told him what Chenille mom, Karen, is told me. He didn't answer. In fact, he went pale white. That gave me the answer I needed. I broke down and Steve tried to comfort me. I didn't want him touching me. I didn't even want to hear it. I told him to leave, but I basically had to force him to leave. I tried calling Chenille and texted her that I needed to talk to her. I got no response. Not one. Basically, 2 of the closest people I have had in my life betrayed me. This is so terrible and I feel so bad. I have like no one right now. I have a sister who has a husband who is the poster child of weaponized incompetence. They have 4 kids and she's pregnant. My sister works a full-time job, 40+ hours a week, cleans her entire house, cooks, takes care of all her children without him doing anything. It is seriously mind-blowing that she wakes up at like 4 a.m., cooks breakfast, does chores, gets all of her kids ready for school, takes them all to school and daycare, and all he does is stay home and work. And when his kids get home, after my sister picks them up, of course, he will play with them for a little and play video games until he falls asleep. She actually makes more than him. My fiancé and I had to stay with them for 6 weeks while our home was being renovated, and since we both WFH, we helped her, and it is amazing how much happier she is when she has help. I helped with the kids, and my fiancé even drove her to doctor's appointments. Her husband literally only acknowledges he is a parent when his family is around, then he is a God-fearing, hard-working father of 5. He is the one that wanted more kids. She wanted to stop after her last baby, but he needed more boys. I am seriously concerned not only for her, but her kids as well, because now her oldest is seeing what's happening and trying to help, but my sister is prideful and refuses to let her child do anything. Me and this man have never gotten along. He's been acting like this since their 8-year-old was born. I've tried talking to her about leaving, but she doesn't want her kids to grow up in a broken home. And unfortunately, her experience with our parents' divorce was completely different than mine, so she doesn't understand that a divorce would benefit her kids here because she thinks they need their mom and dad together. Cut to this past weekend, her and her husband threw a pre-Thanksgiving potluck where our entire family plus his was there. I stayed with my sister a few days before because I knew he wouldn't help. So we're at dinner all talking, and I mention we are trying for a baby, and my brother-in-law makes an offhanded comment to him about how hard fatherhood is. And I snapped and said, like you would know. He looked taken aback and asked me what I meant, and I unloaded on him, calling him a pathetic excuse for a man who makes my 8 months pregnant sister do everything for their family. I went off for a solid 10 minutes and he sat there shrinking in his seat. I left. Last night my sister called me and thanked me for standing up for her and told me she appreciated me. Although today I got a very nasty text from him telling me I'm a terrible person, and because I lied in front of his family, his mom is angry at him and is moving in with them to help her out, and I've made him the laughingstock of his family. He certainly thinks so.